Cari fratelli e sorelle, buongiorno.
Dear brothers and sisters, good morning.
Nel cammino di queste catechesi sulla vecchiaia,
On the path of catechesis on old age, today we meet a biblical character named Eleazar, who lived at the time of the persecution of Antiochus Epiphanes. Eleazar is a beautiful character, a figure who gives us a testimony of the special relationship that exists between the fidelity of old age and the honor of faith. I'd like to speak precisely about the honor of faith, not only about the consistency of faith, its proclamation and resistance. The honor of faith periodically comes under pressure, even violent, from the culture of the rulers who seek to debase it by treating it as an archaeological find or an old superstition, an anachronistic fetish. It's a beautiful story, and we've just read a passage of it, but it would be good to read the whole thing. The biblical story tells us of the episode of the Jewish people being forced by a king's decree to eat meat that had been sacrificed to idols. When it was the turn of Eleazar, who was an elderly man, highly esteemed by all, the king's officials advised him to resort to a pretense. That is, to pretend to eat the meat without actually doing so. Hypocrisy, a religious hypocrisy. There's a great deal of religious hypocrisy nowadays. In this way, Eleazar could be saved, and they hoped that in the name of friendship he would accept their gesture of compassion and affection. After all, they insisted it was a tiny, insignificant gesture to eat or not to eat. This is hypocrisy, though. But Eleazar's calm and firm response is based on an argument that is still striking. The central point is this: dishonoring the faith in old age, in order to gain just a handful of days, cannot be compared in any way with the legacy that it must leave for the young, for generations, for entire generations to come. Well done, this Eleazar. He's an old man who has lived the faith coherently for a whole lifetime. An old man who has lived coherently in his faith for a whole lifetime, but who now adapts himself to a feigning repudiation of it, condemns the new generation to thinking that the whole faith has been a sham, an outer covering that can be abandoned, imagining that you can nonetheless preserve it interiorly. Not so, says Eleazar. Such behavior does not honor the faith, not even before God, and the effect of this external trivialization will be devastating for the inner life of young people. It is precisely old age that appears here as the decisive, irreplaceable place for this testimony. An elderly person who, because of his vulnerability, accepts that the practice of the faith is irrelevant, would make young people believe that faith has no real relationship with life. It would appear to them from the outset as a set of behaviors which, if necessary, can be faked or concealed because they are not particularly important for life. The ancient Gnostic heterodoxy which is a very powerful and very seductive trap for early Christianity, theorized precisely this, that faith is a spirituality, not a practice, a strength of the mind, not a form of life. According to this heresy, faithfulness and the honor of faith has nothing to do with the way one behaves in life, with the institutions of the community, the symbols of the body. It has nothing to do with that. The seduction of this perspective is very strong, because it reinterprets in its own way an indisputable truth. It's true that faith can never be reduced to a set of dietary rules or social practices. The trouble is that the Gnostic radicalization of this truth nullifies the realism of Christian faith, because the Christian faith is absolutely realistic. It's not just saying the creed. It's not just thinking the creed and understanding the creed. It's doing the creed. It's doing what we believe, doing work with our hands. Instead, this Gnostic proposal imagines some purely spiritual faith, and this is not Christianity. And the first... And we see this heresy in many spiritual centers. This heresy also empties the witness, which shows the concrete signs of God in the life of the community, and resists the perversions of the mind through the gestures of the body. This Gnostic heresy, which is a deviation from the faith, this Gnostic temptation, is ever present in our day. There are many trends in our society and culture where the practice of faith suffers from a negative portrayal, sometimes in the form of cultural irony, sometimes with covert marginalization. The practice of faith The practice of the faith is regarded as useless, and even as a harmful external practice, as an antiquated residue, or a disguised superstition. In short, something for the elderly. The pressure that this indiscriminate criticism exerts on younger generations is strong. Certainly, we know that the practices of the faith can become a soulless external practice. But in itself, it is not soulless. That's not the way it is. Perhaps it's up to us older people. It's a very important mission to give faith back its honor, to act coherently with our faith. Coherency in the faith to the end. The practice of faith is not the symbol of our weakness, no, but instead the sign of its strength. We are no longer young people. We're not kidding when we set out on the Lord's path. No. The faith deserves respect and honor to the very end. It has changed our lives. It has purified our minds. It has taught us the worship of God and the love of our neighbor. It is a blessing for all, but the faith for all, not for just a few. We will not barter our faith for a few extra quiet days. No, not at all. Coherent even to the end. We will show in all humility and firmness, precisely in our old age, that believing is not something for old men, no. It's something of life. And the Holy Spirit, who makes all things new, will gladly help us. Dear brothers and sisters, elderly, I won't say old, please look to the young. They are looking at us. Don't forget that.
I bambini ci guardano. Noi possiamo dire lo stesso con i giovani. I giovani ci guardano.
The young people look to us, and our coherence to open up a path for them is very beautiful. And hypocrisy is very, very harmful. And he concludes with, thank you. Now, having heard the Holy Father's reflection, we'll hear the greetings and summary in the various languages. Beginning here with French.
De vous exprimer leurs sentiments respectueux et leur filial attachement. Ils vous assurent de leur prière à toutes les intentions de votre ministère apostolique universel.